the technological advancements between World War One and World War Two are crazy, phenomenal. Yeah, yeah. I mean, aircraft carriers weren't a thing in World War One. You had a couple planes in World War One, but these massive bombing campaigns and jet fighters over the space of 30 years in between these war, these things come on the scene, and it completely changes the landscape of how wars are fought, from World War One to World War Two. This stuff is revolutionary. But let's transition to air power now. We haven't really talked about it too much, um, particularly bombing campaigns. How did the mass use of air forces change the war?
Well, one thing that enabled the massive use of Air Force to change, well, basically the war in Europe was the fact that what was needed were effective bombers carrying major bomb loads and then moving into an area over occupied Europe and in particular Germany and dropping bomb load after bomb load after bomb load. But they had to, in turn, first gain control of the air as best they could over Nazi Germany. Jake, it took them years before they could do so. We were involved in the war in 1941. We did not begin to effectively bomb Nazi Germany in particular until mid 1944. It took us that long. And again, what we needed to do was develop not just the bombers, but also the fighter planes.
Yeah, particularly the P-51, right?
You got it. You got it. And it took us some time to do just that.
Yeah, because these bombers are flying into enemy territory, they're getting hit with flak, and they don't have the fighter escorts to escort them all the way to their bombing destinations and back. And the P-51 came along with a big enough gas tank to be able to do that, and it changed the landscape of um, the air war. But it is interesting to note, and the recent Masters of the Air show portrayed this beautifully. This was the most dangerous aspect of World War II. The bombers and the air forces had the highest casualty rates out of anyone.
Right. But that all comes about initially as they moved through 41, 42, 43. We thought we might be able to gain air control. And one thing that we did not have at the time were not the manpower, but the fighter planes. Take a look, as you so noted, it took some time for the P-51 to come to the fore. And it does in early 1944, which does enable us. It enables the RAF to effectively now begin to take out Nazi Germany's industrial strength via the bombing of its industries and bombing of its oil systems. And then beyond that also, its railroads, which they were utilizing to supply their forces, regardless of where they happen to be on the front.
It also raises interesting ethical questions about the ethics of bombing. Do you think it's necessary? Because there's a lot of collateral civilian deaths that result because of bombing.
Okay, Jake, that was one of the major issues between our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and that is Winston Churchill. He felt that there should, in key areas, not be any restriction on the use of bombers over key cities. After all, Jake, when Germany attacked Britain in 1940, 1941, look what they had in mind in overcoming. And that was the British morale. The British thought that they could effectively counter the Germans, and they continually bombed not just industries throughout Great Britain, but also its key cities, in particular London. Obviously, Winston Churchill never forgot that moment. To a certain extent, in authorizing the bombing that he did by the RAF not only just industrial targets and military targets, but also large cities within Germany, to include Berlin. He always had in mind that the Germans had attacked him in 1940 and 1941.
Yeah, it's hard to blame Churchill for his approach to bombing because London was bombed, I believe, for 40 days straight during the Blitz. So you can imagine the toll on the morale and the view of treating the Nazis with humanity when it comes to Churchill after having to go through that, and all of the British people after having to go through that.
All right, but one interesting thing about that period of time is with the concentration of the various raids now on key cities to include London, authorized by Hitler. In fact, it's what he wanted his Air Force to do, the Luftwaffe. One thing that they did not concentrate on at that particular time, although they were doing so before the Battle of the Blitz over London, they're attacking British airfields, British aircraft industry, and they were, Jake, succeeding in inhibiting the RAF and moving into a an area where they might be able to effectively overcome the Luftwaffe. But when the Luftwaffe changed its targets from those industrial regions and the fighter fields, the RAF recovered. The RAF recovered. And what comes about is the end of the air battle over Britain, because the RAF now begins to effectively counter the Luftwaffe. And one of the major reasons why they do become is because Hitler ordered the concentration of the bombing over London at the time that he did. So it did bring about a major change in military history. The change that does bring about now, thereafter, control of the air over Great Britain by the RAF.
The Battle of the Blitz is one of the most inspiring stories of resilience in World War II, I think. Just to be hammered like that, civilians bombed, London bombed, day after day being air raided by Germany, and just to fend that off day after day. It's pretty inspiring stuff. But I want to talk a little bit about mistakes. To me, it seems that the winner of war is often the one who learns from their mistakes faster. Um, so what would you say is the importance of learning from mistakes? Because both sides in World War II made catastrophic blunders, but I think the Allies learned from that much faster.
Regarding mistakes, the key thing about with the Japanese and the use of their military, they truly did not expect America to recover the way it did. And Japanese military felt that they could hold out against the Allies, in particular the US, by occupying the forces, or occupying the islands and the land areas all throughout Southeast Asia. And Jake, they were very, very successful in doing so. But what comes about is they do not concentrate on what's happening within the United States, within its area of Pearl Harbor, and also along its western coast. And again, it took us 18 months to recover from that attack. And the Japanese really did not follow up any further on really bringing the U.S. Navy and the United States to its knees. They could have, but they did not. So major error in judgment by the Japanese military command. And yes, it does include Yamamoto, despite his thought that the Japanese should continue their assault against the U.S. But overall, the Japanese felt that they could therefore further concentrate gaining their the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere by concentrating its military and their military operations in Southeast Asia. So they remained there. And it is a major mistake in terms of underestimating the United States and its ability to return and counter the Japanese. In the European area, you had quite a bit of conversation amongst the German military officers about various decisions that were made by Adolf Hitler and his political leaders. And I guess the best example I can relate to you that brings about a major defeat is a decision made regarding Stalingrad. The German military wanted to seize the Persian Gulf area because there was oil refineries in the area. There were oil resources in the area. And indeed, by seizing that area, they could then in turn further move on against an effective war against Russia. And it's Adolf Hitler, not his military commanders, but it's Adolf Hitler who orders his military commanders to do opposite, to do what he wanted to be accomplished, even though, quite frankly, it did not gain anything but a great loss. Because after the loss of Stalingrad, the German military within Russia went on the defense from that point on. Went on the defense. So a major error was a politically motivated decision by the leaders of Nazi Germany, in particular Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, I said it before and I'll say it again. Hitler was a doddering idiot. And I think that the war would have gone a lot differently had he not been, and he would have actually listened to his generals.